Hey everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. Today I have my top romance books of all time. This list is mainly contemporary romances. I've been reading a lot of historical romances and I feel like those deserve their own video entirely. They're just hard to relate to contemporary books, and I think I like historical romances just more in general. They can get a little darker, they just have more angsty plots. Anyway, this is my mainly contemporary, there are like two that don't really fit, top romance list. And I have to start this list with Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. I know people have not been super into Christina Lauren's newer releases, but this is the first true contemporary romance that I ever read, and it wasn't that long ago. I think I read this in 2019, and before that my romance reading history was that I read 50 Shades of Grey in high school. That was it. So this just kind of opened my eyes to what contemporary romance could be and what it was. And the plot of this book is we are following, obviously, Josh and Hazel. Hazel is this quirky elementary school teacher, and I think Josh is a physical therapist, but they kind of just have a little history together. Hazel had a crush on Josh when they were in college, and new jobs and new friendships lead them back into each other's lives as, I guess, more established adults. But they are just trying to be friends, and they are trying to set each other up with dates. So they just keep kind of double dating together, but then really it's like their relationship that is developing. And this was just so much fun, but it also gets like pretty serious. Like Josh as a character is a very serious person, and Hazel is completely the opposite. Like she's so quirky, and she has all these random pets. Like she has a bunch of different pets in her apartment. Oh, and something happens with her apartment and she has to live with Josh for a while. This book was just so much fun. I don't know why. I was just so naive to the romance genre, because when this got steamy, and it does, this gets pretty steamy. When this got steamy, I was like, oh my gosh, they can put that in books. This is here in a book. There's a whole universe of these romance books. So I have to mention this book. I gave this 5 stars when I read it. If I reread it, I don't know if I would love it as much. I would probably think Hazel was a little annoying, but when I read this, it was everything. I read this in like 48 hours. I couldn't put it down, and it just has such a special place in my heart and on my shelf. And then I want to talk about Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. And I want to talk about this, one, because I love it. It is truly one of my favorite romance books. And two, people don't seem to like this book. It doesn't have the best ratings on Goodreads. I've heard people talk about it and they don't like it. Well, you know what? I do. Tessa, I do. I love this book so much. We have another quirky female character. Her name is Georgie, and she's a party clown. But listen, don't underestimate her. That's kind of the plot of this book. She's like the youngest sibling, and her family kind of underestimates her, but she has big entertainment business dreams, okay? So her love interest is her brother's best friend, and isn't that just like amazing? So his name is Travis, and he's a former Major League Baseball star. He had an injury that made him have to retire earlier, and he is down. Georgie comes back into his life when he is just quitting the major leagues, and he is down on himself. And Georgie and her perky self says, Travis, that's not allowed. I'm gonna get you back on your feet. So it's just her trying to cheer him up a lot, and them developing a relationship from that, and then they do some fake dating. There's just so much good stuff in this book. What I think people don't like is Travis gets a little, I guess I'll say, overprotective of Georgie, but I like that from my male characters, okay? If they want to be a little possessive and a little overprotective, that's fine with me, but I also prefer darker romances, and this cover is definitely not the cover for a darker romance. This is not a dark romance, but Travis just does have alpha male energy. So I guess know that, and also know that Tessa Bailey writes very verbal, steamy scenes, as in they have a lot of dirty talk, and I feel like people also don't like that in her books, because I guess it can be a little uncomfortable, cringy. People call it a little cringy sometimes. Doesn't make me cringe. I have a great time when I read these books, and I loved Fix Her Up so much. It's one of my favorite books of not last year, but the year before. I don't feel the need to defend Tessa Bailey because a lot of people like her books a lot, but I really like them. And then I'll talk about the guy on the right, but also the guy on the left and the guy in the middle by Kate Stewart. I love this Underdog series. It's on Kindle Unlimited, or at least it was when I read it. And I will tell you about just the first book, The Guy on the Right. This is more like a friends to lovers, and this is definitely more new adult, so our characters are in college together. And I think our female character may be just like a year older than our male main character. Well, his name is Theo, and it's called The Guy on the Right because he's like trying to match with someone on Tinder, and he sends them a picture and it's him and another guy, and they want him to be this other guy who's like really popular, but he's actually the guy on the right. So he's kind of the underdog. He's in the band. He's not a football player like the other characters in this series are, and he has just gotten out of a pretty long-term relationship, and his girlfriend did him so wrong. I think she cheated on him, and his friends are getting him to go to this party to try to cheer him up, make him feel better, and he runs into Lainey, who is a Spitfire. Where is this set? Is this set in Tennessee? Texas. No, I think, yeah, we're in Texas, right? And Lainey's just such a Spitfire. She comes from a single parent household, and she is always working these odd jobs. So she's like a barista, but on the side, she repossesses cars. And that just stuck with me because that is just so funny. But this is their relationship. So they just start a friendship, and they are also working on this Instagram account together. It's for like an assignment for one of Lainey's classes, but it blows up, like it gets super popular, and it's basically just them doing typical college student things. Like they are basically on this project to have fun together and document their fun things in the process. And this book is just so much fun. Like I loved the buildup of their relationship, and when they finally get together, it is perfection. It is so good. And then Theo has to do a little bit of groveling at the end, and he takes it over the top. It is so good. I love every book in this series. 5 out of 5 stars for all of them. And then, you know, I have to talk about the Winston Brothers series by Penny Reed. I suppose you would call this a small town romance series, but there is so much that happens in this. This follows the Winston family, and there are 7 siblings, and 6 of them are all brothers. And each book is one of the brothers' books. And I really want to describe every single one of them to you, but I cannot do that here. So I'll talk about the first book, which is Truth or Beard. We are following Dwayne, who is one of the twins in this family. There's a set of twins, and Jess. And this one is more like an enemies to lovers. Like they went to school together and always butted heads and were just always on each other's nerves, and now they're adults. And Jess is back in town as a teacher, but really she wants to travel. She's just here to make some money, pay off a few loans, and then she wants to hit the road and travel. And then Dwayne, our love interest, has actually always had a crush on her. They have butted heads a lot, but they also just have that like rage chemistry. And this is them getting together in the first book. But this series just has so much happening, so let me talk about the series as a whole. We are set in this small town in Tennessee, but there's a biker gang, which is the kind of overarching plot. And this family's dad was one of the main baddies in the biker gang, and now he's been in jail, and then like prison, not just jail, prison. And so the overarching plot is them kind of taking down this biker gang and dealing with their dad when he gets out of prison. And it gets pretty actiony, especially in the last like 2 or 3 books. It gets pretty actiony, and I just love all of these characters so much. I feel like I have not done a good job describing this series, but it is so funny. It gets pretty steamy. I think all the books on this list are pretty steamy. I just think that's my taste, so. But really, this series is so good. Give it a try if you want a light-hearted, funny romance, but with some real substance and some great characters. I'm talking about Cletus Winston. And then I have to talk about There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark. This might be my favorite romance on this list. Is this my favorite romance, period? This is a dark serial killer romance. And the plot of this is we are in San Francisco, and we have 2 serial killers who kind of compete against each other, and that's their like secret competition, but they have a very public competition in the San Francisco art community. So they're both very successful artists, and they just like very violently butt heads. And then we have our love interest, Mara, who is a struggling artist. She is truly a starving starving artist. And Cole, one of our serial killers, kind of takes an interest in her, and man, I don't know if she's lucky or just really unlucky, but he truly becomes obsessed, as a serial killer would. This is not a healthy relationship. This is actually a very toxic relationship, but it is just so engrossing. And there's a playlist in this, like a Spotify playlist for songs that go with different scenes and just songs for the book in general. It's so good. So good. I appreciated that so much. I think that's what really elevated this to me. But just watching this toxic, messy, action-packed relationship was so good. And I haven't finished the duet. There's a second book. It's called There Is No Devil, and I haven't finished it. I have a big issue with finishing book series, but this book is so good. And Mara is such a cool character. Like, she's very independent, and maybe she gets a little bit left for dead at one point and has to pick herself back up, and I just applaud her. And like I said, I truly have nothing else to say other than that I loved this horrible, messy relationship. And then on a very different note, I have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is much cuter, much lighter, much fluffier than There Are No Saints. But this is set on a college campus. This is fake dating. We are following Olive, who is a PhD student, and she has a relationship with one of the PhD mentors, Adam Carlson. I suppose it's important to say that he is not her direct mentor, but you know what? If he was, I wouldn't care. I like pretty taboo things in books. Anyway, this is so cute. So they strike up a bargain to fake date each other. They are both getting benefit from this fake dating relationship. But then this has some pretty like deep topics on women in STEM and just like power dynamics in general. But this is so good. And just like watching their relationship, because really Dr. Carlson has kind of always had a thing for Olive, and he's finally able to like let that come out and like show her, because he's a very moody, broody man, and I just eat that up so much. And then he also is very touch her and you die, and that really comes out at the end of this, and I just love that so much. On a steam level, I suppose this is not the most steamiest in quantity. Like, there's really only one steamy scene, but it might be the best one I've ever read in my life. Like, it is so good. Some people said the dialogue was cringy, and I just ate it up though. It was just so good to me. And then Olive kind of has she kind of ends up having like a nemesis in this guy who is like offering help to her anyway. I loved that plot line. I loved it so much, and I loved how protective Adam got over her. And like I said, I just completely ate this up. And I also loved the graduate school setting. When I read this, I was still in graduate school. Not that I did STEM stuff, but I like felt seen in this, and just in like school stress. It did not like trigger school stress. It just made me feel seen, and I just appreciated it a lot. But I loved this book so much. It was one of my favorite books that I read last year. And then back to the dark side, I have Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. This was the first indie book that I read, I believe. This is the first bully romance that I read, and it was so for me. I don't know if there's another book that was more for me than Punk 57 was. So our plot is that our hero and heroine, they have been pen pals for years, but they have never met each other in person. They don't live far away from each other. They live pretty close to each other, but they have gone to different schools, and they just always decided that it was best to stay pen pals and not risk their friendship by meeting or anything like that. But then they happen to run into each other, and Misha, our hero in the book, he knows who Ryan, our girl, is in the book, but she does not know who he is. So they run into each other, and Ryan is not what Misha thought she would be. She's like this cheerleader type persona, like kind of a like mean girl, and that is not who she is in their letters to each other. And Misha is this lip ring having punk rock lyric writing boy, and I think that's why I loved him so much. That is just such my type. In books, fictional, that's my fictional type. So Misha has some stuff going on in his life, but then he ends up enrolling in Ryan's high school. Yes, this is in high school. These characters are in high school. I just chose to completely ignore that aspect of it. Misha ends up enrolling in Ryan's high school under a different name. So he has a mystery from his past that he's trying to figure out, and to do that, he's enrolling in this high school. But he also just wants to mess around with Ryan. He wants her to become this better version of herself that he sees in their letters. So he's just kind of pushing on her, bullying her a little bit in a fun way, okay? But they start developing something, and she still does not know who he is. But their relationship is just so tense and so angsty and so hot. And it is just truly so good. Just please ignore that these are teenagers in high school. I guess they're 18. I'm gonna say they're at least 18. This is very new adult, okay? Like, I just read it like they were my age. Anyway, I love this. I ate it up. People feel weird that he starts a physical relationship with her under a false identity, and like, sure, that's awful, but also this is fiction and I'm here to be entertained and I'm here for the angst. Truly, this is probably the angstiest book I've ever read, and I love it so much. And if you've read this, I want you to think about the car wash scene in here, and that truly transformed me as a person. It truly did. So pick this book up if you're interested in that at all. And then I'm going to talk about Too Late by Colleen Hoover. I have a weird relationship with this book because you know how you see a book's reviews and you kind of let them color how you perceive the book. So this book is definitely more suspenseful, and Colleen Hoover wrote this under C. Hoover at first. I think the newer cover of the book has Colleen Hoover on it, but the older cover had C. Hoover on it. This is dark. Like, trigger warnings for rape scenes. But our plot for this is we are following a college couple, and our girl does not have any family support. She is the main support for, I think she has a sibling. She has a sibling who lives in like a group home. So he has like a disability and he lives in this group home, and she is his only financial support. And that ties her to her boyfriend, who is a drug dealer, like a pretty big drug dealer. So they have a horribly toxic relationship, but she is just hanging on because he provides her financial stability. But she's like, as soon as I graduate college, I'm out of here, I'm on my own. But while they're still in college, an undercover detective, an undercover officer becomes part of a triangle for them. He's trying to bust her boyfriend, and to do that, he is like forming a relationship with her a little bit, but they fall in love. And then this book just gets so wild. There's something in here, and I was just like sweating. The scene had me sweating. It was so intense, and I ate this book up. Asa, yes, her boyfriend Asa, the drug dealer guy, he is just like so unstable, but this is just so good. I can't get enough of this. But this book has things in it that I do not like in other books, but for some reason when Colleen Hoover writes it, I eat it up. So that's really vague. This is a love triangle. There's definitely cheating in here, but like, you don't feel bad about it because her boyfriend is such a bad man. And I was just hooked by this. Like, I could not go on with my life until I finished this book. So if that sounds interesting to you, and if you like suspense in your books, pick this one up. Okay, now this one is not truly contemporary, but this is more fantastical. This is Zodiac Academy by Carolyn Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. I have only read the first 5 books in this series. There are 7 out, and I believe there will be 8 total. This is a fantasy romance, and I say this in the kindest way possible. This is definitely Kindle Unlimited. This is like just purely for your entertainment. This is not for amazing writing. This is not for groundbreaking plots. This is just truly for your entertainment. So just know that. So this is fantasy romance. We're following our twins, Tori and Darcy. They've been in the foster system in Chicago, and they get pulled out of their world into this magical fae world where they are actually princesses. I know that sounds ridiculous. It's fantasy and it's Kindle Unlimited, so it can go there. And in this world, you have magical abilities based on your zodiac signs. So if you're a fire, water, earth, air sign, you have that elemental ability. And some people have more than one. So our twins are just trying to find their footing, and they are enrolled in Zodiac Academy so they can learn to master their abilities. But there are like 2 factions in this world. So the, like, I guess you could call them like the royalists, and they are Tori and Darcy supporters, like super happy their princesses are back after they thought they were dead for all this time. And then we have this other faction that supports the heirs, which are 4 guys from 4 powerful families in this world. So they are enemies, but they also just have these attractions for each other. This just is a lot, okay? This series is a lot. But if you want to be entertained, and if any of that sounds at all interesting to you, pick this up. Each of the endings of these books is so dramatic and so painful, especially the fourth book, Shadow Princess. Especially Shadow Princess. Oh my gosh. The ending of that book, truly, I had trouble functioning after it. So you might ask, why would you read books that cause you to feel like that? Because it is just truly my passion. And I love the series. Like I said, I've only read the first 5, but I have been so entertained by this and the relationship drama and the forbiddenness of the relationships within this series. It is on another level. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, or if you need a Kindle Unlimited book to pick up this series. And then the last book I will talk about is Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. This is kind of historical, but it also has that like modern aspect of it. I'm talking about time travel. So you have probably heard of this. It's a super popular TV show now. But the setup of Outlander is we're following a couple. We're in like the 1940s and they have both been in World War II and the war is over and now they're just trying to kind of rekindle their marriage. Claire, our heroine, was a nurse in the war and then her husband Frank was like a commander or something. So they are on this vacation together in Scotland. Basically, Claire touches a rock, like imagine Stonehenge. She touches a rock and she gets transported back in time to the 1740s where she meets Jamie Fraser and they have a marriage of convenience, which is an amazing trope to have in a book, but it is just so dramatic. I mean, this book series has like, is it more than 8 that are in it now? Is she still writing books in this series? I've only read the first 3 and these are chunky books too. These are not just like 350-page romance books. These are like 1,100-page books. I guess know that before you get invested in it. Like I said, I've only read the first 3 and this series has caused me a lot of pain. It's very dramatic, but it is just so... Jamie and Claire are so meant to be together, like you can taste it. Sorry, I've been talking for a long time about these books, but this is so good. I mean, obviously it has a huge franchise around it now. It's so good. So if you just like have a hankering to pick up a 55-hour long audiobook, I would encourage you to choose one of the Outlander books. The first one I think is only like 30 hours, but this is so good. Like it gets so dark, but it is just so emotional and so easy to get invested in. There's mystery, there's traveling, obviously there's time traveling, but also just traveling around the world. It is so good. Definitely pick it up if you have been thinking about it. But that was 10 of my favorite romance books. Like I said, I want to do one that's more about just historical romances, but I feel like I need to read more of them. Like I feel like at this point I would just be talking about every historical romance book that I read. But let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought about them. Let me know your favorite romance book of all time. Please let me know. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one.